shin yende gunje kemba po senje gunje nyen chepo tamje ken lai gu chain se. So, to continue our Dharma discussion, we were discussing about conduct or way of Dharma practice or the path. Yesterday I mentioned that we can sort of summarize as an overview of our conduct or our practice in these four precepts. Three kinds of suffering and three kinds of reasons where those sufferings arises, and the three kinds of prescription or Buddha's teaching, being Sutra, Vinaya, and wisdom, Abhidhamma. And as a meaning or as a practice that is prescribed in these three teachings are known as the three trainings, which are like a medicine, and which are discipline, concentration, or sometimes I'm not sure if the word discipline, sometimes it is also translated as in ethics, and concentration or one-pointedness, the second, and the third, insight or wisdom. Again, it's also important to know there's these three: discipline, concentration, and insight can be taken as in view, meditation, and the conduct itself, such as wisdom being view, concentration being meditation, and the discipline being conduct. So if we summarize all the Buddha's teaching, his methods, and we can summarize into these three Dharma of scripture and the Dharma of realization, which is closely related to the three sufferings that we go through in our daily life as well as in general, which are related or which arises from the reason three poisons. So it is also important to understand the order of these three trainings, because it has a certain kind of sequence or the order. Discipline being the first, concentration being the second, and the wisdom being the third. So you start with the discipline, and on top of discipline you will train or cultivate the concentration, and on the basis of the concentration the wisdom will arise. So there is a certain kind of cause and result relationship between these three: discipline, concentration, and the wisdom. There's a beautiful metaphors for these three as being different aspects of the path or the methods in order to deal with these three poisons. One example is that let's say we can look at we already have this example I think on the table. It is said that in order to manifest the quality of this candle, illuminate the darkness, there are certain causes and conditions has to be there. So first is like you have to have a good environment. For example, these candles is not going off and is being very nicely, continuously spreading its light. The reason is it's in the proper environment. So means it's inside the house. Imagine that if you put this candle, put it on the outside, especially like now where there's strong wind, it just cannot, because there's no environment for that candle to be survived. Similarly, when we practice the ethics, and the discipline is like creating that favorable environment for our practice. Whether it is time, I want to wake up every 5 o'clock in the morning, it will become a favorable for your concentration, meditation. Or I want to practice in my practice room instead of my kitchen, again it will also helpful. So there's many discipline. In fact, some people might think that I haven't took any discipline, I haven't received any vow, so what should I do? But that's not true, because generally speaking we say that once you're born as a human being, you already have the discipline of being a human, keeping the human's discipline, what you should and should not do. Then for the Buddhist, Not only that you haven't took a vow, but actually you have a quite a strict vow. It's just didn't that we didn't pay much attention. Do you remember when you are excited about Buddha Dharma and I want to take a refuge? And you go to Lama, and there's different levels of taking what it means to be taking refuge, but I'm just talking in the general sense, ceremonial way. You go to Lama and he will cut a small, part of your hair. And during that, just before cutting your hair, he will ask you one question. And unfortunately he will speak in Tibetan, but that's maybe and he will say, Tadepa Tola. This is one question he will ask you. And you have said Tola. So that means that, are you really happy? Are you really joyful doing this? So there's a very liberal way of becoming a Buddhist. Yeah? Nobody can force anyone. So he really asks you, even just before the cutting your hair, do you really want to do this? So you already took the vow of renunciation. That's quite a lot. That means that, yes, from today, Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha is my vision, strategy, and resources. I'm interested in nirvana. I won't spend my time and energy to the samsara. I'm very clear. And also it's again like asking you, do you really know what you really want? So this is there's many symbolic, but it is one way is simple is that, are you joyful? Are you appreciating this moment? Are you gratitude to this moment? Means you become a human. That's not easy. But not only that, you have these intact senses. Not only that, you encounter with the Dharma. Not only that, you actually start doing something for the liberation. And if you compare that opportunity in this whole sentient beings, it is maybe 0.0. So there's so much to be joyful, to be celebrated. This is one way. But after that means when Buddha became a ascetic, he used to have a long hair before that, as a king. And the first thing he did was that he cut his own hair. So this is a gesture of letting go, gesture of renunciation. So when Lama is asking you, and are you happy, means are you really sure that you can let go? Do you really want to be enlightened? Because I think it's a good question to ask ourselves again and again. The more you ask, then you will become more what is enlightened mean. Because everybody has our own versions of enlightenment. And sometimes you think then you might not like it. Right? And that will be lots of waste of time. So now why I'm trying to say this is that the conduct can be also understood it as the intention and the it's called the intention and the application, yeah? Or intention bodhicitta or application practice. So now I'm trying to say this intention. Intention, how to start there, how to train that intention. In another word, we can say the bodhicitta. So maybe I will try to say a few things about that today. But what I was trying to say is that discipline. You have to start from the discipline, and it will act as in creating the proper environment for meditation and the wisdom. And the second one, the concentration, is the talking about the stability aspects of our mind. This is like this. So now we have a proper environment, and now imagine that you take this butter and start moving. Yeah? And when you do that, the blades or the light cannot come out because it's moving constantly. And when your mind is moving, clarity cannot be there. So it's almost like opposite. Unstable equal to not clarity. Stable mind equal to clarity. So why we are not moving this? Because if we move, whether I will kill this butter lump or I cannot see its light. Right? So this stable mind is like the stability of this flame or the butter lamp. So you should not move constantly. Let it be the way it is. So this is the second one. Because of that. So environment, stability. And now the third wisdom is when the butter lump is not moved, and then the clarity will shine out by almost itself. And the light or this clarity is the third one, wisdom. Now this is important to understand that, so why we need the light for the first place is that there's a dark. Remember the ignorance? So we have to dispel this ignorance. But so what is the actual remedy to the ignorance? Is a wisdom, there's no doubt. Because environment doesn't dispel the ignorance. Stability doesn't dispel the ignorance, isn't it? So what was the direct actual remedy? It was the light itself. So that's why we used to talk about prajna is important, wisdom is important, recognizing the emptiness is important. Yes, all these are important and it's very true. But it doesn't really mean that we should directly focus on the wisdom and disregard everything else. This happens a lot because we become a little bit like this short-sighted, narrow-minded. Oh, imagine now, you don't care about the environment. You don't care about the stability of this lamp, and you just try to extract the light from somewhere out of nowhere. It doesn't work, right? So yes, it is true. The actual remedy is wisdom, but by saying that, you cannot disregard discipline. You cannot disregard the concentration. They are very much related. Otherwise, it will be almost like saying that, oh, I would like to paint a beautiful picture, but I don't care about the canvas. I only care about the picture, right? If there's no canvas, it's impossible to paint out. So because of that, yes, wisdom is important, but it comes from the concentration. In order to have a proper concentration, I have to have a discipline, right? Without a discipline, longing for the wisdom would be just this, what you call the infatuation. You have this dream, which is very unrealistic thing. So what I was trying to say is that these three things are very related, and knowing where to start, but also at the same time, discipline is important, but you should not stick with the discipline itself, because see, discipline itself is not the result. What we need is a wisdom, right? Sometimes it become like too much, then say, oh, I will not eat for 1 month and then I will become enlightened. It was this, remember, the extreme asceticism as path of liberation can happen. Now another danger is that, oh, everything is wisdom, I don't care about discipline, these are dualistic, all this, all that. And again, it is very dangerous that you just take out this to the very strong wind and say, oh, I like light, and where you're walking is in the mid of the storm. It just doesn't happen there. If you want to have a light, you should walk towards the favorable condition for that. And it also happens a lot, and this is what we call in practice that between view and conduct there has to have a balance. And when it goes to the extremes, and saying that, oh, or then so these two extremes. How to say in English, maybe that your view has fallen into the extremes of conduct and thinking of this is the ultimate way, and disregarding the wisdom and just like stuck on this discipline, not knowing that this is the method. And sometimes you go to the opposite way. Oh yeah, everything is non-dual, everything is, what's the point of doing this, what's the point of doing, and that means that you go to the other extreme, falling into the extremes of view and disregarding the conduct. I will say about this maybe more detail in tomorrow. So and also it is said that let's say you have the tree of ignorance is there and you want to cut it, and then the discipline and concentration, they're like your hands, what you need. You have to have 2 hands in order to cut it properly. But if you just hit by your hand, it will take a long time maybe. So what you need a sharp axe. But the sharp axe has to be handled properly, otherwise it can backfire. So who handles this sharp axe? Discipline and the concentration. And when you have discipline, concentration, axe, you have a complete weapon to cut the tree of 3 poisons. So these are some nice, comprehensible metaphors mentioned in the sutras and the commentaries, I think. Um, but I think usually I also, it's helps me to understand it from, like, let's say you are a painter. So discipline would be like creating a very inspirational environment, you know. I don't know, nice view, nice air, and especially to have a clean canvas, nice canvas, right? You can't just paint on where there's already so much color in there. So this is also why the fresh mind, empty mind, the beginner's mind is very important, because it's like you can paint anything you want because the canvas is clean. That means that you should not practice, you should not study with too much presumption. Then you cannot judge properly, you cannot see, because you have already lots of, you know, energies there. So I think if you, before you paint, if you think too much, then it's hard to paint, you know. If you keep your mind fresh, and then all this comes up, the energy of creativity comes up. Similar with our mind. Even though you are long-term meditation or practitioner, but each time you do session, it should be not thinking like, I'm this, I'm that. Just forget everything and just start as a fresh mind. And I think concentration, maybe it's very easy, because if you don't concentrate, you know, it's hard to paint, because you cannot see what you are doing right, what you are doing wrong, you know, unless you are painting some modern art or something like that. And I think wisdom is like, so what is the outcome of that? When you have a nice canvas, when you have a nice concentration, and when you have this very relaxed, fresh and empty mind, and when you combine this, and you will have this beautiful, unexpected pictures, probably. And this is the wisdom, the clarity, and you see what it is, really like, oh, this is what it is. Although in the modern art, it's hard to know what it is. But usually, when you paint something, you wanted to see it, you know, what it really is. So what I'm trying is this clarity, concentration, and the discipline. So these are the orders or the sequence, and it's not just randomly. There's a big reason why it is. So for example, like for the beginner, we have to spend, let's say, 70 or maybe for the discipline, and maybe 20 for the concentration, you know, and maybe 10 for the wisdom. I mean, if you're practicing something, practice could be discipline based, concentration based, and wisdom based, right? And then eventually you move 50-50, and then at the end, when you have certain kind of confidence and the comfort, you know, comfort, because if you practice for a certain time, you will have this comfort. Okay, so now, you know, I don't have to be every time careful, you know. So it becomes more natural, and then you can move from less discipline, maybe, I mean, intentionally it will be automatic, but focusing more on the wisdom. So that's how you move. So, for instance, let's say after we become a Buddhist, and when we say, I take refuge to Buddha, I take refuge to Dharma, I take refuge to Sangha, we're already taking so-called the refuge vow. So you have this refuge discipline. And actually, every time, unfortunately this day it is done in a little bit like quick, sort of quick ritual, yeah. And you're more excited about the getting the certificate of nice paper with the stamp with the unrealistic Buddhist name, Wisdom Ocean, translated. But actually, during that, teacher will explain, explain about you have a certain vows of this, let's say, which you should not do, what you should do in your daily life as in general, this is there. Every time the vow is given, letter, teacher will do that. But maybe because of many reasons, I think it became more like a ceremonial, and we don't do that. But that's very important. So actually in that vow, it's quite a clear picture again. It gives us who you are, what you should do, what is your vision. For example, let's say once you go to the one vow is there at the beginning. Okay. Once you go refuge to the Buddha, you should not make a plan B refuge. But actually what happens in our life, maybe Buddha is the plan B, it's not our refuge, really. When nothing works, then we go to the Dharma, right? As a last, what do you call the last resort? But that should not be. It's very written at the beginning. Maybe we think like, I have money, so everything will be okay, yeah? And then suddenly something happens. Oh, Buddha, what happened, right? You start thinking. So actually, we have more faith in the money rather than Buddha, probably. I mean, I'm talking my personal, but I don't know. So, when this samsara fail, I will go to as nirvana as a backup plan or second kind of, that's actually, that happens in our mind. So we are not clear about even the first one. And then there says, after going to the refuge to the Dharma, you really have to understand what is peace and violence and what is non-violence. What is disturbing, what is non-disturbing. You should be very careful. Each time we will do something, and you have to make, am I doing something violent? Maybe the violence is not right word, but like disturbing things. Am I disturbing myself? Am I disturbing somebody else? Sewa mepa. It's a word, but I think we are not talking about like war or fighting, It's like, are you doing something that disturbs oneself or the other? And this is your vow. When you say, I take refuge to the Dharma. But not only that, most important thing is that when we say, I take refuge to Dharma, I accept. The one thing I think, the word refuge in our culture is, especially in Buddhism, it's a very good, positive word. But maybe, generally how we use refuge is not a good word, right? You lose your country, you take refuge. Right? So it's kind of like there's some sort of pathetic, but that's not really what it means. I think we should say that courage to accept the reality in this context. So when you say, I take refuge to Dharma means, I have a courage to accept the law of reality. And in this context, it will be like fossils. That means, when impermanent hits me, I won't ask question. Of course, I'm a compounded phenomenon. I've already signed, I take refuge to Dhamma 3 times, because Lama will tell you 3 times, and then I accept, I see the suffering. I understand the development. So those forces, when you accept forces, and that means you are taking refuge to the Dharma, and you react accordingly. Yeah. So it's not like I have lots of problems, I take refuge in you and you solve all my problems, please take care of me. Well, that is one way to look at it, but maybe you can say the least meaning what it means to be going to refuge. So, and also going refuge to the Sangha, and you have certain vows. So you see the most important thing is Dharma, right? Ultimate protector, even it's not a Buddha, it's a Dharma. So we are not saying that Buddha makes some rules and if you accept that you become a Buddha, no. He is saying that if you accept the reality, regardless of this Buddha or somebody, you are Buddhist. So in Buddhism, when we say going refuge, not necessarily mean that some sort of Buddha, Shakyamuni there, and we are Buddhists, we are not, we do this, you don't do this. No, I'm not talking about it. We're just like understanding and accepting the reality of life and reacting accordingly, wisely. And if you can do that, you are a Buddhist. So what I'm trying to say is that discipline is important, where we should start. And don't think that I have to take some more vow. You already have vow. Yeah? And you just have to understand it. And you have to take it a little more seriously, so to speak. Yeah? Otherwise, we don't take it seriously. And we complain that we are not developing. Yeah? It's like you didn't pay seriousness to the environment. And then if you say, oh, you're putting this lamp into the storm, and then you're complaining, oh, why there's no light, why there's no light. There won't be light because there's not enough cause and conditions. So these are some related to yesterday's. So maybe I will talk about the intention or bodhicitta tomorrow. But this, I thought, is important to understand the relationship between these three trainings, order, and so that you don't fall into the extremes of saying, oh, this is important and this is not. So that you don't fall into the extremes of the exaggerations and denigration. So you can practice as a middle way practitioner. Okay, then I will stop here. Sunam Diye Tamche Sikpa Ne Tamne Ne Pe Dhanam Pamje Ne Kega Nache Balai Chupaye Sepe Sole Dowa Dovai Shu.
By this merit may all attain omniscience, may it defeat the enemy of wrongdoing, from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara may I free all beings.